Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Community Giving's weekly Community Connections webinar. We're glad that you could join us today. We have a number of people expected to join us, and I know people are just signing on now. So we'll give them a couple minutes and we'll get started. So thank you so much for being with us, and we appreciate you tuning in. Giving everybody just a chance to sign in. We had over 90 people registered for today's session, and so we know not everybody is always able to attend, but they like to also watch the rebroadcast afterwards, so they might not be joining us now, but we'll give them a minute or two and then we'll get started. We're giving people just a few minutes to gather and log on. So hopefully everybody's able to access the webinar today. So welcome, and we appreciate you all joining us today. Okay, well, we are expecting quite a few more people yet to join us, and we also know for some of us it does feel somewhat like Monday, and it actually is Tuesday because of the Memorial Day weekend. But I just want to welcome you all to Community Giving's Community Connections webinar that we've been doing weekly for the last 8 weeks. This is webinar number 8. All of the past webinars are on our website at communitygiving.org/COVID-19. And you can listen to the recordings. But we started this with just as a way to stay in contact and stay connected in the community. And we weren't sure what the response would be, and we've been pleasantly surprised that all of us have this need at this point in time to connect with each other. And so we wanted to offer this as a way for us all to continue to learn and help us during this difficult times. But we want to say first and foremost, we greatly appreciate all the work that you are doing, especially if you're a nonprofit on the front lines. Times are challenging and things are difficult. And we want you to know that our role here is just to support you in your work within the community. Today's webinar is something we had talked about a while back, and it's something that really is pertinent to all of us, and that is about leadership and well-being. And to introduce today's program, I'd like to turn it over to the Executive Director of the Alexandria Community Foundation, Holly Witt. And Holly is going to introduce our topic as well as our speaker for today. So Holly, the floor is yours.
All right, thank you, Steve. So before I introduce Sara, as Steve said, this is a topic we've actually discussed, and we just feel like it's so important to talk about self-care and taking care of ourselves during this time and our well-being. And I don't want to embarrass Steve, but I would like to just call him out, because I feel like over the last couple months, as we've gone through personally at Community Giving, just all the changes and working from home and the stress of everything that we're going through, he's been so good at helping us to really make sure that we're taking care of ourselves. And what we do at our staff meetings is we take a few minutes and we all share updates on what's happening in our lives. And we know that we're all, people coming together, and we have families, and we acknowledge that, how we're doing and how things are going in our lives. And he's so good at we'll give a little update from our weekend, and he'll say, how's the family? How's everybody doing? How's your dog? And, it's just such a great feeling to know that he really cares. And that's important anytime, but especially right now as we're going through these really challenging and stressful times. And so I appreciate that. I think people at Community Giving do as well, that we get to relate to each other and how everyone is doing and making sure that we're taking care of ourselves. And so it's an important topic. And we know that you as the nonprofits are also, you know, going through stressful times. It's challenging. You're having to change the way you do your work. You're not able to do your fundraisers. You're having to come up with creative ways to do things. And so we just felt that it was important to really address the topic and maybe give you some tips and ideas and things that you can do to really make sure that as a leader and as a person in your organization that you're taking care of yourself. And so it was interesting, a few weeks ago, I actually had a conversation with Sara. I met Sara through a mutual friend, and we had a phone conversation about how things were going. And I thought she'd be the perfect person to really address this issue. Just a little bit about Sara. She is a servant leader. She's an encourager. She's got a great heart for people, and she wants to encourage other leaders to do the best they can and taking care of themselves and being the best leaders that they can be. And so she equips leaders. That's what she does with her consulting company called Sara Thingvold. And so she talks about this in regard to work, but also in people's personal lives. And so Sara started her consulting business in 2009. And a little bit about her background and her education. She has a BA in psychology from the University of Nebraska, Lincoln. She's a certified executive coach. She's a Gottman Institute psychoeducational leader and trainer. She does workshops. She leads women's and couples retreats. And she's also published some works. One of the things that she's been doing, it's called Living a Flourishing Life. And it's called 12 Daily Drives. And it's on Facebook. You can find her there. I think it started during COVID. She can confirm that. But just some real inspirational pieces that she's written just to encourage people to really be taking care of themselves, especially during this difficult time. Sara's married to Greg. They've been married for 27 years. She has 2 adult children, one of them getting married this fall on their property near Ashby. And so I'd like to introduce Sara and thank her. Thanks, Sara, for being with us today and sharing your heart and sharing some things with us that are going to help us to really make sure that we're taking care of ourselves. So thanks, Sara. And I'm going to turn it over to you to share additional stories and a little bit more about yourself. So thank you, Sara.
All right, thank you so much. Am I unmuted here? Okay. All right, so thank you so much. My name is Sara Thingvold, and the topic of well-being, leadership well-being, is near and dear to my heart because as a leader, a person is a leader no matter what they do. I'm going to read a little story, and then we'll get started. When she looked around, Florence Chadwick saw nothing but a solid wall of fog. Her body was numb. She had been swimming for nearly 16 hours. Already, she was the first woman to swim the English Channel in both directions. Now, age 34, her goal was to become the first woman to swim from Catalina Island to the California coast. On that 4th of July morning in 1952, the sea was like an ice bath, and the fog was so dense she could hardly see her support boats. Sharks cruised toward her lone figure, only to be driven away by rifle shots. Against the frigid grip of the sea, she struggled on hour after hour, while millions of people watched her on national television. Alongside of Florence, in one of the boats, was her mother and her trainer. They offered her encouragement. They told her it was not much further, but all she could see was the fog. They urged her not to quit. She never had until then. With only a half mile to go, she asked to be pulled out. Still thawing her chilled body several hours later, she told a reporter, "Look, I'm not excusing myself, but if I could have seen land, I might have made it." It was not fatigue or even the icy cold water that defeated her. It was the fog. She was unable to see her goals. 2 months later, she tried again. This time, despite the same dense fog, She swam with her faith intact and her goal clearly pictured in her mind. She knew that somewhere behind that fog was land, and this time she made it. Florence Chadwick had become the first woman to swim the Catalina Channel, eclipsing the men and women's record by 2 hours. And so it is. Each of you are leaders. You right now are in a time and in a season, we can call it COVID season if we want, of what does this look like? This is new. I've never been here before. And not only is it impacting your individual community, it's impacting the world. So the world really hasn't lived through this before in different ways, maybe different ways, but you're trying to really learn, well, how do I do this? How do I manage? And when that happens, physiologically, mentally, and physically, things change. Our stress impacts our body, and we actually do get what's called a brain fog. So what we heard for Florence Chadwick, she had that brain fog. And she knew, I mean, if you read about Florence, she's a very avid swimmer. She has swum for a number of years. This was very rare for her. Experienced leader, like each one of you are. We all experience brain fog, and we all need to pause and to reflect and ask ourselves, what is it truly that we need to do for ourselves? Like Holly mentioned, and like Steve, you're doing a great job reminding each other, what do we need to do to take care of ourselves in order that we can best serve each other? Okay, so a little bit of a definition with leadership. So leadership is influence. Basically, it's influence. Moving forward in pursuit of a goal. Our goals in leadership, so whether you're, no matter what we're doing, you have each of your work, you have your nonprofits, maybe your corporate, you have your families, you know, we're building a home. We have a purpose in mind of what we want to do, and we need to create a vision for that. And so what we do is, alongside of it, is we want our values. Well, what's important to us that we want to instill in our purpose? And we're going to do this individually or within a group. So I do help leaders lead at home and at work, because both ways leaders are impacted. At home impacts our work, and our work impacts our home. And how can we balance and do a good job doing both? So our well-being, Merriam-Webster Dictionary says, it's the state of being happy, healthy, or prosperous, individually or within a group. So Florence Chadwick, she knew, she trained, she mentally had to be in the game. She got in the water, it was really freezing cold. She knew what she had to do to keep herself grounded. In a group, it's a little bit different. In a group, we take our individual values and our differences, and then we try to combine them to be agreeable within the group. And sometimes that can be a little hard, but it does impact our well-being. It impacts our energy. So our energy comes from our well-being, is our well-being. So it encompasses mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. So then also Gallup did a study. So Gallup did a study with 150 countries, from USA to Zimbabwe to Afghanistan. They identified 5 essential elements of a person's well-being. Career well-being, liking what you do every day, whether or not a person works, whether or not they get paid for their work, that they like one thing they do every day. Social well-being is having strong relationships and love in your life. Financial well-being is effectively managing your economic life. Physical well-being, having good health and enough energy to get things done on a daily basis. And then there's community well-being, a sense of engagement you have within the area where you live. And what they identified and what they found from all this research from the economic place, the psychologists, the scientists, what they discovered was that only most people, 66% of people, We're living well in only one of these elements, one of these areas. 7% of people were flourishing in all 5. So what they did was they went to work on trying to learn more about what these 7% of people were doing in order to be flourishing in life. And they found, because if 66% of people are only flourishing in one area, they're struggling and they're suffering in the others. And when COVID hits and it dynamically changes people's routines, it's like, well, what's going on? What do we need to do differently? I get this brain fog because my adrenaline rush, I get increased adrenaline, increased blood pressure, increased cortisol level, and that's what can give us the brain fog. They also identified that less than 2% of the world's population live with a purpose in mind. So if we think about that, if Florence had not identified her goal of, I'm going to swim from the Catalina Island to the California coast, I know where my finish line is. I know my timeline. It's about 15 miles, 16 miles, and I can do that. I've practiced, I've trained for this. Well, in COVID, we haven't trained for this. We haven't practiced this. We don't even know the timeline, and the timeline keeps changing. And when the timeline changes, that can impact my well-being. And I get excited, and then I'm sad. And then I get excited, and I lose connection. My social well-being, my financial well-being, 4 million people have lost their jobs. It has impacted our well-being, absolutely. Okay. Next slide, please. So what we need to do is, when a person identifies their purpose, I put on here some questions. And the goal is, because I know that when I get increased adrenaline and increased cortisol and increased blood pressure, I may not act like I normally do. I can't think like I normally do. And words that come out of my mouth, I might say things that I'm going to regret. So each morning and each evening, when I consciously think to myself, before I get out of bed, okay, so what is my purpose for today? What is my goals? How do I want to be? And how do I want to feel? And what's my reason? How come? What do I want to accomplish? So when I think about, when each of you as leaders, think about when COVID is over, at the end of the season, when you look back, what do you want to have accomplished? How do you want to be remembered to have behaved? That means when people think of Sara and how she acted and behaved during this COVID season, what are they going to say? How do I want to be remembered? How do I want to be an influence? How am I serving others to live their life in a flourishing life? What words will describe how I felt and how I managed my feelings? Will it matter? Some people, it's like, it doesn't matter. Well, some people it matters a lot. And you all have big hearts. You're all working in the nonprofit world. You have big hearts for people to serve them well. It matters. And what is your purpose for doing what you do every day? And so I just wrote down an example of maybe a purpose. I'm living a flourishing life within all 5 areas of my well-being. So we're just basically hitting the tip of the iceberg here with some of these well-being elements. And so let's keep going on. Okay, so 4 key elements within leadership well-being. 2 of the hardest things to do in life, 3 basic needs, 4 top reasons for conflict, and strengthen your emotional intelligence is what we'll talk about really quickly. 2 of the hardest things to do in life. When you're not liking someone else's behavior or words, you might depreciate them, thinking they're not important. The second thing is you're going to turn it on yourself. You're going to say, wow, I'm a horrible person because I did not think very well of anybody else, of that person. That's not who I am. That's not what I value. And you're starting to depreciate and isolate, and it can spiral and get worse because now I'm embarrassed by what I said. And now I don't like this person for what they said, and we clash. Can you flip the slide? Thank you. Our brains have a negative bias. Within 3 seconds, it's going to think a negative thought. within 3 seconds, if it goes to a negative thought, my brain is going to start scanning for everything else that's going bad. So if I did not say, as it could be as easy as, okay, I moved. So Sara, I just moved to Ashby. I'm in this new area with my office space, and now I have beds behind me, and I'm so embarrassed because now this isn't professional. We all talking on Zoom, and then I start spiraling to things that are negative, and then I start projecting the negativity in other people. But I have to pause, and I have to prepare my mind and my heart to think of appreciation, because then once I can do that, then I can defeat that negative bias. Okay, can you flip? The second element is 3 basic needs. Each person has the freedom of autonomy. That is, I am free. Steve, Holly, Carol, Kathy, each person has the freedom of having the values that they value. I do not want to be controlled. No, I don't want somebody to tell me what I have to value. And when we do, that can clash, that can cause hard feelings. And maybe Holly and I have the same family value, but we might define that value differently. And that makes a difference. Perceived competence. We all want to believe that we're competent. If I have a negative thought bias, and I know that if I don't prepare my mind to be appreciating people that I work with, I'm more likely to depreciate them, like we just talked about, and say, why are they even on the call? How come they're even in this arena? How could they even be on the board with us? They don't even know what they're doing. But when I can come from a place of curiosity and not get defensive about somebody else having a difference of opinion, then that way, and I can say, you know what, you are competent. Of course you are. Right now, we're just clashing with a difference of opinion because maybe I have brain fog because I have so much going on. And then we're relatable and we're connected. That's a third basic need. Like Holly said at the beginning, Steve, you did a great job with saying, hey, how's your family? Hey, what have you been doing? Besides work, how you doing? How are you taking care of yourself? Because if I don't take care of myself, I'm going to spiral and I'm going to isolate, and that's not healthy for anybody. Can you flip? I gave you a little example here because you can look at this, but when a person feels controlled, that squelches them. 40% of people go to work and they hate their managers because they feel controlled by their manager. Most heart attacks happen on Mondays. And so if I'm not enjoying my work, that's going to come home with me. If I'm having troubles at home, I'm going to bring it to work. If I'm feeling controlled, I'm going to keep spiraling in that negative feedback, and the narrative that I create is only going to make matters worse for me and for everybody else. And it's going to decrease my well-being. Can you flip, please? Third element, 4 top reasons for conflict. Would you believe the first reason for conflict is absolutely nothing? Nothing. How come? Well, it's because if I feel higher stressed, if something happens that I don't like, that I'm getting easily offended, because my emotional space, each person has only 9% of emotional space every day that they start the day with. And so my emotional space can diminish before I even leave for work, or now, because a lot of us are working out of our home, before I sit down in my chair, and now I have to work. So it can start from nothing at all, just the way that I'm feeling. I am my own worst enemy when short-term decisions impact my long-term goals. If I react instead of respond in a way that conflicts with my values, I'm more likely to depreciate myself. And I'm more likely to not live out a flourishing life, serving and influencing other people in a way that serves them the best. Colliding core values. If I say we have individual, I do this a lot. We have these portraits that we create through Triune. And so we have servant leadership portraits, individual. We have our organizational, we have our family portraits. When our individual portraits, we have our values. And then we have our family or our organizational values. when those values say say our organization has a value of integrity, and then I have a value of integrity, but our values are different in definition, we might collide because our behaviors are going to be different. We each have 5 core emotions: sadness, anger, fear, shame, and happiness or joy. When a person pauses and consciously can ask themselves, remember, top reason for conflict is nothing. If I'm at conflict and I'm feeling overwhelmed or stressed, my fear or my stress can exacerbate my ill health. Because remember, once I think of a negative thought, my brain is going to start scanning for absolutely everything, and I'm going to go into creating a situation in my mind that's going to happen, and it may not even ever happen. It's because I'm falling prey to not preparing my mind, to not who I want to be, how do I want to feel, my reason, how come. Only 1 out of those 5 core emotions, if you notice, are positive. I have a 1 out of 5 shot. So by each morning, reflecting and thinking and preparing my heart and preparing my mind, I'm much more likely to live a flourishing life, decreasing my adrenaline, decreasing my cortisol level, decreasing my blood pressure. And when I can manage those effectively, it increases, there's actually oxytocin in my brain that's self-soothing. And I can live out with happiness and joy, but I gotta withstand some of those sensitive feelings. It's not sappy, mushy gushy feelings. These are, it's emotional intelligence. Let's keep going, please. So out of conflict, 69% of conflict are perpetual problems. They're gonna happen time and time again. 31% are solvable. Because we know there's perpetual problems, when I can prepare my mind, when I can prepare my heart, when I can appreciate and how I want to be and how I want to feel, I can manage the perpetual problems much more efficiently. I can respect the people who maybe don't agree with my opinion because I understand we're different. We're going to have different ideas. And that's what makes us all unique and valuable and important, is because we come from a place of contribution. It's when we get easily offended and angered that's when we can spiral. We want to really be mindfully present and conscious of what's going on. Can you flip these? So integrity, this is a quote from Brene Brown. Integrity is choosing courage over comfort. It's choosing what is right over what is fun, fast, or easy. It's choosing to practice your values rather than simply professing them. So remember, we talked about the 3 basic needs. The first one is autonomy. So people can have values, but are they actually acting in their values? And when there's a conflict, internal conflict with values, how am I reacting or am I responding? It takes 3 seconds to have a negative thought. It takes 15 to 20 seconds to go from a feeling of being offended to overlooking and forgiving and being humble and being full of grace. It's okay. Can you flip? Strengthen your emotional intelligence is the 4th element. I'm alert to my emotions within myself. I'm alert that other people have emotions. Holly, I'm just going to use you because I see your name and because you introduced me. I know that I have emotions. I'm going to choose, okay, 1 out of the 5. Okay, sadness can also be disappointment. And I can ask Holly, how are you doing today? She can have her feelings. And guess what? If Holly and I are at odds, her feeling of frustration is always valid, just like mine is. So we can be not in agreement with something, and we can mutually respect each other and validate each other's feelings. And let's just partner through this because we're staying curious. We're not critical. I'm not poking her eye. She's not poking me, and we're not going for each other's jugular. And we want to manage those emotions and those feelings. Again, this isn't sappy. When a person, a leader, can practice those soft skills, that's what helps them lead well. I want to validate, I have emotions and they're real. You have emotions and they're real. So let's manage this together because we both care about our relationship. How am I being? How do I want to feel? And how come this is important? If I don't value my relationship with Holly, I'm not going to care. I might gossip. I might throw her under the bus. I might argue with her. I might escalate in my emotions. But when I validate that the reason is, you know, Holly, I know that if I get upset, that might influence our relationship. And for me personally, Sara, my number one value is relationships. So I want to serve Holly well, because if I don't, I know that that might trigger Holly. And social well-being spools out dominoes 6 circles. So my 6 circles, Holly's 6 circles, maybe she brings it into your group, impacts everybody else, their 6 circles, it can impact the world. Okay, we'll spin. Okay, so here I thought was just a really cute, funny picture. So many people go through life running from something that isn't chasing them. It's what I'm making up in my mind. Cognitive distortions. Okay, flip. Consciously pause. Blaming and contempt are the most damaging to relationships. I know I got to end really quick. Observe and track your own patterns before evaluating anybody else. What and where is this feeling coming from? What do I need to do right now to nurture myself, disconnect, and protect myself and others? When you make a positive change within your relationships at work or home, it can improve your relationship by 40%. Can you flip? Okay, I know we have to, the last one. So Holly brought up the daily drives. So the daily drive started last summer. For 7 months, I partnered with Mark, and I taught on well-being, career well-being within our advanced leadership group. And then in January, I started writing these daily drives. And then I actually was talking to my daughter, who was working with homeless transition in clients. And she's like, Mom, can you do something? So I put some daily drives out on Facebook, and then some of them got published as articles. And so the daily drives are helping a person at the very onset of the day. How do I want to be? With what feeling? And my reason how come? And so a lot of people from the online workshop that I did said that the daily drives really help them become present each morning and help them throughout their day. And I practice this. I put them all into an ebook so people can access them because they are really powerful. Can you flip, please? I know, okay, I'm closing. So there's questions. Anybody have questions? I went pretty fast, kind of slow, fast.
Hi, Sara. This is Sara Carlson, and I have a couple of questions that have been chatted over to me. So I'll just start with those while reminding everyone that the Q&A tab is open at the bottom. And if you click on it and type in your question, I will give that to Sara. So the first question for you, Sara, is I heard you referring to Triune leadership and to Mark Dieterling. Do you want to share a little bit more about who that is and what that is for listeners who maybe aren't aware?
Sure. So when I moved to the community from Stillwater, Minnesota back in September of 2017, I didn't know anybody. And one of the things I did was I went on LinkedIn and tried to reach out, and I met Mark Dieterling in November of 2017. And Mark has a business, Mark Dieterling is his name, and he has a business called Triune Leadership Services. And so after we got to get to know each other, our values really matched very well. He invited me to consider to collaborate with him. With my expertise in emotional intelligence and family, marriage and family relationships, and then leadership, he saw that as a valuable partnership. So I partner with Mark. I don't work for Mark, but Mark Dieterling has these leadership roundtables. Servant Leadership Roundtable, Coach Approach, and Advanced Group. And I work with other organizations to create these servant leadership portraits. So that's a little bit of that. So, and then I have my own business in what I do apart from Triune. But yes, I partner, Mark and I do partner. He's, you know, whether a person signs up for a roundtable or individually, I also create, or I work with groups or couples on family portraits or couples portraits. I tell you, after I created my own leadership portrait, my husband and I created our family portrait. It really decreases, it helps us focus, and it is so powerful and transformational. If anybody has any questions about them, please contact me for sure. Was that helpful?
That was helpful. Thank you. Mary is wondering, how can she access the ebook you mentioned?
So I am putting it together as we speak. I just hired somebody to help me. I've never written one yet. And so I will have that on my Facebook page. My Facebook page, my professional page is Sara Thingvold. I also have a website. I had a website before I started collaborating with Mark. I paused it. I learned more about Triune, and now I'm creating a new website. So how it will be, it's not launched, it'll be launched within the week. If you like, I can give you that website.
Go ahead and I'll type it right in for everybody.
Okay. I don't have it yet.
Oh, okay. We'll get that to you, everyone, in the follow-up information.
And so you can contact me for the ebook. It'll be on the website. It'll be on my Facebook page. I'll get it out as soon as I can. LinkedIn, I do a lot on LinkedIn. If anybody else is on LinkedIn, connect with me. That would be great too.
All right, that really concludes the questions. Most of them were about how can they follow up with you or get your information. So you just hit on all of those things.
Okay.
Are there any additional questions? And I see that we have advanced to Sara's contact information there for you, so you can make a note if that would be of help to you. All right. Thank you. I will turn it back to my colleagues.
Great. Thank you so much, Sara. That was so interesting. I think we all could learn how to handle our leadership, you know, in these times. It seems like, I know for myself, I felt like things were just a little bit off balance, and it took a while to get my even routine back to normal. And that is a whole different mindset for a person. And then even how you connect with your coworkers is a different thing when you can't sit face to face and count on that body language. And so much of that relationship building is handled differently when you can't see each other face to face. So I really appreciate hearing that. So just a little bit of an update on the community foundations. I just wanted to remind you all that we have 9 community response funds. They are in Alexandria, Brainerd, Carver County, the Central Minnesota Community Foundation, which is the St. Cloud area, Sauk Center, Wilmer, Painesville, Ricori, and Foley. So far, we have collectively given out 64 grants, totaling $333,500. There is about $480,000 left, thanks to the generosity of our donors and some foundations that have helped us, along with our own funds as well. So we are continuing to review applications on a weekly basis and concentrating on immediate needs, knowing that nonprofits are going to need some support for recovery and resilience in the end. So we do have some money set aside for that as well. Some of the other grant rounds that we have open at the time, currently we are reviewing the arts grant round for Central Minnesota Community Foundation and Ricori's Community Builder Funds. Two grant rounds that are open currently are the Ruth McDonald grant round in Alexandria, which covers health and wellness, and then the Rural Poverty Grant, which covers 14 counties in central Minnesota. You can learn more about all of these on our website at communitygiving.org. If you click on our grants, it will list all of the grants that are housed with CMCF and all of the affiliates, and learn about the details with those. So with that, I will turn it back to Steve.
Well, thank you, Carol, and thank you very much, Sara Thingvold. That was just fantastic, and a good reminder during these times to simply be aware of our own well-being and how it impacts everybody and people we come in contact with, and the importance of relationships. At the Community Giving, our mission is to engage people, connect resources, and build community. And we know that communities really can't exist without the building of relationships and how important they are. So thank you so much for reminding us of the importance of leadership and well-being. And again, all of this will be tape recorded, and it is available on our website, as are all of the other webinars we've done, 7 other webinars at Community Giving /COVID-19. You can have access to all of those. And also, as Carol mentioned, other resources are available on the web, and we invite your comments and your feedback and even ideas for topics. We don't know if we'll continue this after the pandemic and after we maybe can go back to work, but so far we have not run out of topics, and people have been encouraging us to continue to keep these kind of webinars going to continue to build connections, and so we intend to do so. But we welcome your ideas, your thoughts, your feedback. Just email us at info@communitygiving.org. Next week, we're going to have a focus on donor relationships. And so we're really excited about this particular session. It is actually going to be at noon instead of 2 o'clock. And we're very excited about the partnership we have with the Initiative Foundation, Sourcewell, and the Minnesota Council on Nonprofits that will be bringing us this focus on donors and donor relationships, finding donors, keeping them. And we hope that you'll come back to actually noon next Tuesday. And we will be back with another session of Community Connections. So thank you once again for what you're doing in the community. We appreciate all that you're doing, and we appreciate you tuning in. And again, please give us feedback if you have anything that you'd like to share with us. Stay well, and we wish you all the best. Thank you for tuning in.